Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm back at it again, and I told you guys this is my last video that I was doing a spoiler review on Spider-Man that was the first movie, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, just because I really want to talk about this movie. It's that good to me. First off, I just want to give a big thank you to everybody that worked on this movie. From the people that did the animation, to the Metro Boomin for making a fire soundtrack, and all the other artists and voice actors and actors that were a part of this, because this was a magical time. And I think one of my favorite parts about this movie, and this isn't even in the movie, I just scroll on Twitter. Like, I've been scrolling on Twitter and seeing all the hype for this movie. And one thing I love seeing about this movie is the people that animated the scenes have been coming out and talking about their experience, or talking about what they animated and stuff. And I love their passion for this movie. It shows that they really care. And you can tell by that in the actual movie. The movie is visually pleasing. There are so many beautiful shots, but mind-blowing shots as well. And you can tell everybody, the soundtrack, the score, the actual actors and voice actors put their heart and soul into this, and for that I am eternally grateful, because for me, this movie was a 10 out of 10. It meant the world to me for multitude of reasons. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out the way before I started the spoiler review. Now let's get into the actual spoilers. The way I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be pretty much talking about the whole movie from beginning, middle to end. And yeah, one thing I really loved is the intro to this movie. Like I said in my non-spoiler review, Gwen's world is honestly my favorite. The pastel colors of how she's feeling and stuff was really interesting to me. And it was just so colorful and bright and really nice. I loved everything they did with her world and like her emotions. You know, they do a whole narration of Miles's story, like they do a recap through Gwen's perspective, so third person point of view instead of Miles. Like in the first film, you had Miles talking about his story, but in this film, Gwen is the narrator, or at least in the beginning half of it. And I just found that so interesting that they did something like that. And the first sequence, though, of how she was explaining Miles' story, everything that was happening, it was all very interesting, because then they went into her backstory, how she became a superhero and stuff. And I'm so glad they fleshed her out even more in this movie. Like, I feel like she's the one character, because this is a two-parter, so not everything gets resolved in this movie, but I feel like she's the one character that has a beginning, middle, and end. And like, so when the first sequence is happening, she's playing with her band. Comic book readers know what I mean. Like, for normal people, most people probably don't know Gwen's in a band. And that was so cool to me that they actually addressed her band. I was like, yes, they're pulling it from the comics. That made me very happy. But just her drumming out her emotions, and her band being like, girl, what's wrong with you? And they were trying to figure out what was happening, because they were done playing the song, and just watching her just beat the drums like she was mad, which she was. But seeing her tell her story and Miles' story was so visually pleasing. They did it in a light blue pastel color, and I was just in awe. But I'm glad they fleshed her character out more. We got to see what actually happened, like her Peter, how he died, what his life was like a little bit, and how he became the lizard and how she couldn't do anything to stop it till it was too late. And I just found that all really compelling and really great. You know, I've said this on my Instagram stories, I'm an emotional person. So for me, when I would... Blue, get down. Hey, get down. Thank you. But when I was watching this movie, I was already crying. To me, that's how good this story was. But I remember there was a person sitting next to me, and they were looking at me like I was crazy. Because I'm pretty sure nobody else besides me in my fully packed theater was crying. But holy cow, I was tearing up. I was trying to hold back my cry. I was just in love. And then we get to after she does the whole explaining Miles' story and her own story, we go to her saving or trying to save people in a museum from I can't think of his name. Why can I not think of his name, bruh? Well, Adrian Toomes, but his name is different because he's from another universe. But it was just really interesting because the design of him, it was like a wooden type. It was like a wooden toy type design. And whenever he would throw out attacks, you would see sketches of what the artists were doing. And I just found that so cool. And then it was like Miguel O'Hara comes in, Spider-Woman comes in, and I don't understand why they did the whole Spider-Woman's pregnant. Like, yes, that is from the comics. But did it need to be in this movie? Because there were a lot of times in this movie where I'm like, ooh, is that baby gonna be okay? Because she got into some rough situations. But I absolutely loved like their entrance and how Miguel was like, I'm gonna take it from here. Spider-Gwen is like, okay, go ahead. Then the Vulture, there we go, comes from behind him in the smoke and attacks him. That was pretty well done. And through the whole climax of it, like the end resolution where Gwen's dad comes to arrest her because her dad thinks she killed Peter, was so heart-wrenching. And she had to reveal her secret to him to hopefully reason with him. But he was in cop mode, and he was like, no, put your hands up. You're under arrest. And I'm like, dang, that's crazy. And then Spider-Woman was like, alright, we can't leave her here. She ends up going with Miguel O'Hara and Spider-Woman into the lobby, is what they call it. Or the Spider Society, whichever you prefer. But it was a crazy way to leave off Gwen's story. Just like, I feel like that was really crazy. One, her dad was still planning to arrest her, even though it was his daughter. And she was like, I didn't murder Peter, but he didn't listen. So that got left on like a little cliffhanger until the end of the movie. Like towards the end of the movie, I should say. So we jump to Miles' life, what he's doing, and he's swinging through the city, and we come across a spot. I feel like, I get he isn't supposed to be the main idea or focus of this movie until the third movie, But what they did with this character, I didn't really find the Spot funny, but I did like his character. You know, he starts off as this person, like, he doesn't really want to resort to crime, but because of his body, the way he looks, he can't get a job. So what is he supposed to do? So he thinks, let me steal money from the ATM machine. And Spider-Man just happens to be there, like in the grocery store when he's robbing it. So they get into this whole conflict, and the Spot's like, you did this to me, you created me, and I created you. And Miles is just like, you're the villain of the week. And I love how that plays into the overarching narrative for the Spot going forward. So they fight a little bit. Then Miles has to try and text his dad, being like, I'm on my way, I forgot about the parent-teacher conference thing. And I think the over-narration, because they did it twice, one with Gwen explaining Miles' story, and then Miles explaining his own story, that definitely didn't need to be in the movie twice. But, I mean, I didn't mind it. I know that is a problem for a lot of people going into the movie and coming out. But yeah, I do feel like if you were going to explain his whole life and origin story again, you should have touched upon it once, and that was it. Like, I feel like Gwen's explanation was pretty good. I do understand it gave us a little bit of more detail of what Miles has been doing since the first movie, but there could have been other ways to do it. He didn't have to explain the whole origin and stuff of how Miles got his powers and the whole events of the last movie again for the second time. But so he's trying to text his dad while he's fighting the Spot, and eventually he does show up to the conference, and it was pretty interesting how they were getting mad at him for his B in Spanish and stuff. I love the dynamic between Miles and his dad and mother, and I love how focused it was on them. I feel like that's what made Miles relatable, was his like the family dynamic between the two, all three of them. So eventually he does have to leave because he was fighting the Spot before. And I like how the counselor is just like, you know your son's lying to you, right? You know it, I know it. It just further exceeds the narrative of what they're trying to do later in the movie, and like for the next movie. And so as we go on, the Spot explains his origin story. I love the references with the donuts to Everything All at Once. That was a great movie, and there were definitely some good references to that movie. But also just in general, I can't believe the donut of the last movie played a significant role in creating the Spot. That is cool to me. And I find it funny that the Spot blames Miles for making him the way he is. But in my mind, I'm like, you shouldn't have been working on the collider in the first place. That's kind of your fault. Like, when you saw it exploding and stuff, you should have got your butt out of there. That's your fault. But then again, I have a bias. So, but moving on, he fights the Spot. His dad gets into the picture, and he's trying to protect his dad while fighting the Spot. And it's just like, I like how Miles really just made the Spot a villain. Because when it started, he was a normal, nice guy. Well, I don't know if he was really nice, but he didn't want to resort to crime. And then Miles calling him the villain of the week just set him off and was like, all right, you're gonna make me the joke? Fine, I'm gonna take everything from you. And the way he evolves is crazy. I'll touch more upon that when we get to it. But like once the Spot kicks himself on accident after they go to Alchemex, it's like a reminder of how Miles was tripping over his shoelaces when he was trying to become Spider-Man in the first one. So one thing I like about the Spot is he has so much similarities to Miles. Like, they're two sides of one coin. They created each other, and then their origin stories to how they discover their powers and stuff, it's kind of similar. And I really love that. The attention to detail is so on point. What else? Well, after he gets teleported to his spot dimension, I forgot what they call it exactly, so I'm just gonna call it the spot dimension. But once the Spot is in his dimension, he sees all of the spots just floating around, and he peeks his head through multiple different realities or alternate dimensions. And I like how one of them is to the Venomverse, and you see Mrs. Chang, and she's just not fazed by him going there. That was a great cameo. I love that. And it's cool to see live action, like them doing live action stuff while still being an animation. But he was like, also, I love the reference to I have the multiverse in the palm of my hand, which is a reference to Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus being like the sun in the power of my hands. That was a good callback. But it's things like that, the attention to detail. I just love it all. And then we cut back to Miles talking to his dad, having a heart-to-heart, which his dad doesn't know he's Spider-Man. So technically his dad is talking to Spider-Man, but to Miles, it's him talking to his dad. And just trying to explain a little bit that Miles has stuff going on, and you might want to talk to him when he's ready. You never know. But I just thought that was a nice, fun little moment between the two of them. And eventually he goes off to get the cakes for his dad becoming police or captain of the police force. And the conflict between them, like once he gets to the party, like why did he come late? And why are all the cakes messed up? I also like how the cake says, I'm not proud. And then they have their whole little argument. And then they ground him. And he puts on his headphones and he starts listening to music. One of the songs from the soundtrack. I don't remember which one it was. But I'm glad that the way they implemented music in this movie was nice. And then Gwen comes and is like, Miles, you want to go somewhere and hang out? And he's like, yeah, I'm kind of grounded, so I can't go. And then she jumps out the window and is like, is Spider-Man grounded? And he says no, and then he goes along with them. And through this little sequence, it's wholesome, but it's also like, it's ominous, because there are points where things feel off. Like Gwen and Miles are catching up. Miles is learning things on the fly. He's learning it from Gwen, but I guess she doesn't notice. And it's a nice little moment, but at the same time, you feel like something isn't right because of how Gwen disappears in certain sequences. Miles doesn't know what's happening, but us as the audience sees what she's doing. Like she puts a little thing on the wall to identify the spot. And of course Miles doesn't know that. He thinks Gwen came to visit him. And so they eventually get to Miles' little thinking spot. And I find that so cool. Again, it's the attention to detail. In No Way Home, well, not in No Way Home, but in most of the Spider-Man movies, Tobey has his own little thinking spot. Andrew Garfield has his own little... What in the world? My computer just shut off on me. I don't know if it's still recording. Yeah, it's still recording. Okay. But, as I was saying, Tobey has his own little thinking spot. Andrew Spider-Man has his own little thinking spot. Tom didn't really get that. Like, he had a few buildings he was on, but nothing like memorable. And then they gave Miles his own little building in this movie. And like I said, it's the attention to detail that I love about this movie. The callbacks, the references, it's just so on point. But they have a nice little moment, and then Gwen's like, in every universe, Peter falls for Gwen, and then it never ends well. And I'm just like, man, they're really setting their relationship up, but at the same time, they're kind of letting you know something might happen. And I'm like, oh, I hope if they get together, nothing bad happens to these two. And then eventually they end up going back to the party, and his parents are mad, and then they interrupt while Miles and Gwen are hanging out. And then after like a few minutes, Gwen gets a little beep on her watch, and she's like, oh, I gotta go. And then I like this is one of my favorite moments of the movie, where Rio, Miles' mother, is like, you're growing up so fast, and I'm just worried that wherever you go, people won't be looking out for you like we do. That's such a strong moment and so heartfelt, because you know Miles' mom cares for him. Well, both of his parents do. But it's just like, it's things like that where it makes Miles' character so compelling. And I just love it. And you know, then she's like, go get her, like, go get Gwen, because Rio sees that Miles likes her. So, of course, Miles goes and follows her, and what he finds is a lie. Gwen has been lying to him this whole time. Like, she sees what the Spot has done to Alchemax and like what happened in the lab, and he goes invisible so Gwen doesn't notice that he's following her. But Spider-Woman calls Gwen, talks about how, like, where's the Spot and everything, because she was supposed to bring him in. And she was like, things happened, and Spider-Woman is like, okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit more time, but if you don't get him this time, I can't help you. In what she was trying to say is, like, Miguel O'Hara would have been mad, and she told Spider-Woman that she saw Miles, which she wasn't supposed to do, and she was like, I will never see him again. She looks back at the city and is like, bye, Miles. Jumps through the portal, and Miles, he looks back at the city for a second, and then he's like, nah, let me go follow her. So he jumps through the portal as well, and they end up in, I don't know what the city is called, and I don't want to butcher it, but it's pretty much Indian Spider-Man's world. And I love the different art style change, but Gwen is looking for the Spot, so she goes to the Indian world, like India's Parvati's, I think that's how you say his name, Parvati's world, and they eventually figure out what the Spot's trying to do, and Miles also tags along, even though he wasn't supposed to be there. it was nice seeing what was happening. And they eventually got to Alchemax, trying to stop the Spot from gaining more spots from the reactor that can go to different multiverses. And Miles is like, I'm trying out this new thing, because he was trying to break through a barrier in Alchemax, but Parvati and Gwen were just pestering him, so he couldn't do it fast enough. And then your boy Hobie, aka Spider-Punk, comes through, breaks that barrier, and Hobie reveals where Gwen has been staying for the past couple of months. Miles starts to learn a lot more about what's going on, and he's thrown off. He's also kind of getting jealous, because the fact that Gwen is staying at Hobie's place, and Gwen and Miles kind of have a relationship. They have a friendship. They definitely like each other. The movie never puts them together, but it's just like they definitely are getting feelings for each other. And so Miles was definitely getting jealous of Hobie, and it was so sad to watch. Not because Miles was jealous, but I could relate to what was happening. And she was trying to deflect and change the subject and stuff, because she didn't want Miles to know that she was staying at Hobie's place and stuff. And then they eventually get to the Spot, and they try and stop him once more, but he touches the reactor before they could get to him, and his body just starts turning completely black. And he's like, see you, I'm gonna take everything away from you, Spider-Man. See you around. And that line is just... No, he was like, I'm gonna take everything away from you. I'll see you back home, Spider-Man. And that line is so chilling, because in the beginning, he's like just a character that doesn't really... He's a villain, but not really a villain. And then by Miles calling him a villain of the week, that annoyed him. And now, he's gonna be a menace in Beyond the Spider-Verse, and I cannot wait for it. But Miles is infuriated because he's like, he sees glimpses of the future, and he sees that the Spot is planning to kill his father. And then the whole Alchemax building starts to collapse, and the Gwen, Hobie, Miles, and Parvarka, or I don't know how to say his name, but they all work together to save the civilians. Eventually, Parvarka comes across his girlfriend being stuck on a bus, and the chief police, there we go, like protecting a girl on the bridge. And Gwen is trying to stop Miles from going. She's like, she tells Miles, I don't want you to die or get hurt. And Miles is like, I'll be okay. But part of her intention was to protect Miles, but the other part was she knew why the policeman shouldn't have been saved. So she was trying to prevent Miles from saving him. But of course, Miles saves him, and Parvarka's whole universe starts collapsing in on itself. And I'm like, what is going on? I was completely shocked. And then all of these spider people come through a spider portal, and they're trying to save Parvarka's universe. And Spider-Woman comes through on her motorcycle and is like, Miguel O'Hara wants Hobie, Gwen, and Miles to go to Spider Society. So they go. Miles is seeing all these spider people, and Gwen told him earlier in the movie that the Spider Society is a small group of selected spider people, I guess. But when they get there, it's like a giant lobby just full of 280 spider people, because the people that made the movie said they wanted to put 280 spider people in this movie, and that's what they did. And so Miles was amazed, and Gwen is just nervously like, welcome to the lobby, because she lied again. And so they eventually get to Miguel O'Hara, and Miguel O'Hara starts explaining the idea of canon events and how certain people in a Spider-Man's life is supposed to die. And Miles is like, no, I don't like that. And then he starts asking about his father. Like, when does his father die? And Miguel's like, in 2 days. So he's like, oh no, he was like, you guys gotta let me go home so I can save my father. And Miguel, he put the Spider Society together so that he can prevent universes from collapsing in on themselves, because he himself was one of the reasons why a universe collapsed in on itself. And I thought that was so interesting. The idea that there are canon events that are supposed to happen, that are supposed to make spider people into Spider-Man or women. And that was really interesting. A new take on the mythology of Spider-Man. And I like how Miles is just like, no, I don't want to do that. And so they have this whole chase sequence of trying to get Miles. And there's just this one beautiful part where they're on the train. Like, this is the middle of the movie where I kind of stopped liking it. I just wasn't interested in it. I wanted the more grounded storytelling that we were getting in the beginning of the movie with Miles' family and Gwen's family. Although I did think the canon event stuff was very interesting. An interesting take on the Spider-Man mythology. But also, I think I was kind of on the fence on so you're telling me all these Spider-Man, all 280 of these Spider-Man are okay with saying, yep, my family member or this loved one that I care about just has to die. So you're telling me everybody universally agrees? I think that's one of my problems with this movie. It focuses more on the loss instead of the hope. Spider-Man is both about hope, but also about loss. So when it was more focused on the loss aspect, that's kind of what threw me off. And then it's like, I kind of felt like that was a betrayal to some of these Spider-Man and women. Because it's like, not everybody is going to have that same ideology of Miguel. And I do think Miguel's partly right, but I also think Miles is right. And I'm on Miles' side. Well, I like Miguel in this movie, so I'm kind of on his side too. But it was just like, it was interesting. And then they had a whole chase sequence. Eventually they get to the train and Miguel has Miles pinned down. And Miles is like, everybody's trying to tell me how my story's supposed to go. Nah. Like, that line? No, he was like, everyone's trying to tell me how my story's supposed to go. Nah, I'ma do my own thing. That line is so amazing. That was fire to me. Like, now knowing the context of it, that line is absolutely fire. And I love how Miles drew out spider people from where they were. He did it on purpose. And Miguel thought he had no plan, but he really did. And that was smart writing. it made Miles smart. So he blasts Miguel away and he jumps off the train. And he's on the run again. He eventually gets back to the tower, or the spider's society layer, and starts messing with the machine to go back to his world. But he was an anomaly. He was the original anomaly, because the spider that bit him wasn't supposed to bite him. And that also blew my mind, because I'm like, this is crazy. So you're telling me Miles was never meant to be Spider-Man? That's wild. And so when the machine is trying to send him back to his universe, it sends him to Earth 42, which isn't his universe, but looks very similar. And so everything seems normal up until you get into his city looks a little bit different, but at the same time it looks the same. And then you get into his room and you notice not everything is the same. And his mom comes in and he's like, and he starts talking to her, explaining that he's Spider-Man, because he was contemplating throughout the movie whether he was going to tell them or not. And eventually he was just like, you know what, let me tell him. And it was just like, she didn't know who Spider-Man was. And that's when it kind of, well, for me, it didn't click. I had to see the twist at the end to realize what was going on. But because Gwen went to his actual universe where both parents were still a thing, so it got me confused because they went to two different universes. And I'm like, what is going on? How does she not know who Spider-Man is? But he explains the whole story. Then Uncle Aaron comes into the house and he's like, Uncle Aaron! And he's like, whoa, what's going on? Because Miles's Uncle Aaron is dead. So when he saw Uncle Aaron alive again, he just ran and immediately hugged him. And then Rio sends Miles on a grocery chore or a grocery job. And Uncle Aaron's like, yeah, I'll make sure he gets this stuff done. And they head up to the roof. And he's like, okay, this is the mission. This is what you have to do. And Miles is so confused. And then they get to the top of the roof. And the city's destroyed and everything. And when you look at where the mural was in the first movie where they had Uncle Aaron painted, instead it was Miles's dad. So that's when it clicked to me that Miles is in another universe. And then he gets knocked out by the Prowler of that universe. When he wakes up, he sees Uncle Aaron putting on some beats and the Prowler up on the roof looking down at him. He jumps down, reveals who he is, and Miles realizes, I was sent to the other Miles' universe, and this is who was supposed to be bitten by the radioactive spider. And it was just great. That reveal to me was just crazy. In my head, I thought the movie was going to continue on, and it just stopped after they talked a little bit. And Miles is like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Miles Morales. But he says it in a deeper, darker tone. And I'm like, what did I just watch? And I was sobbing. But overall, I really love this movie. It really hit home. And I don't like the middle portion that much, just because of the things I touched upon. Like, I don't think all the spider people would agree with Miguel's idea that, oh, we have to stop this. But as my friend, like me and a couple of friends have been talking, one of them is like, he thinks Miles deserves consequences for his actions in this movie, which I do completely agree. What he's doing is kind of crazy. And he thinks Miles is kind of dumb because, one, he's destroying a canon event. And if he really does stop his dad from dying, he can pretty much destroy his universe, and they might not be able to save it. But then again, it's only happened twice, so it could not happen. There's no confirmation of either. I think Miles is really written well, is a character that was written really well in this movie. But overall, I loved it. Everything from the attention to details to the cameos, like Donald Glover coming back to reprise his role as Uncle Aaron, but he was a live action and animated. That was so cool to me. There was just so many things, and man, I'm definitely gonna try and see this movie one more time, at least in theaters. But I love this movie. It was a 10 out of 10. It hit me emotionally in the beginning and in the end. And I don't know where Beyond the Spider-Verse is going to go. It's crazy. I don't know what they're going to do. And I'm so scared for it because I don't want them to drop the ball with that movie. Because you can easily mess this up. I'm hoping. I know these movies were filmed back to back. So there is a good chance that it's good. But if it's bad, it can ruin the whole fundamental reality of this movie. So I'm hoping Beyond is as good as this one was. I'm hoping there's a good resolution, or at least a satisfying one. Oh man. Yeah, I love this movie. But thank you guys for watching me ramble. Since this is a spoiler review, if you guys want to talk about it in the comments, you can. Again, this is a spoiler review, so you can let the spoilers run wild. Thank you for watching. Peace.